The Prince Summary. Machiavelli's timeless guide to power and political realism. Introduction. Before we begin, welcome to this audio summary. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about what you're about to experience. This is purely an audio presentation. There are no flashy visuals, no rapid cuts. What we're doing here is something increasingly rare in our modern world. We're asking you to focus, to truly listen, to engage with ideas that have shaped political thought for over 500 years. In an age where our attention is constantly fragmented, where we're trained to consume information in bite-sized pieces, taking the time to deeply understand a complex work like this is actually a radical act. So I invite you to settle in, minimize distractions, and give this your full attention. The insights we'll explore today reward that kind of focus. Now, let's talk about The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, a book that has become synonymous with cunning, strategy, and the ruthless pursuit of power. Niccolo Machiavelli was born in Florence in 1469, during the Renaissance. He served as a diplomat for the Florentine Republic, traveling throughout Italy and Europe, observing leaders firsthand. But in 1512, when the Medici family returned to power, Machiavelli was dismissed, imprisoned, and tortured. Desperate to regain favor, he wrote The Prince in 1513, as both a job application and a manifesto. Though he never regained his position, his book would reshape political thought forever. The revolutionary separation of politics from morality. The revolutionary core of The Prince lies in its radical separation of political effectiveness from conventional morality. Before Machiavelli, political philosophy focused on how rulers should act according to religious or ethical ideals. Thinkers described imagined perfect republics and virtuous princes. Machiavelli rejected this entirely. He wanted to examine how power actually works, not how we wish it worked. He observed that leaders who strictly followed Christian virtues, being merciful, keeping promises, acting with compassion, often lost their states, while those willing to be ruthless when necessary maintained control. This doesn't mean Machiavelli advocated cruelty for its own sake. Rather, he argued that a ruler must be willing to act immorally when the situation demands it, because the survival of the state trumps personal virtue. A prince who loses his state through excessive goodness has failed in his primary duty. Machiavelli categorizes different types of states, because the challenges depend on how power was acquired. Hereditary principalities, passed down through families, are easiest to maintain because the population is accustomed to the ruling family. Mixed principalities, where new territories are added, present complications because newly acquired regions may have different laws and loyalties. Entirely new principalities, acquired through conquest or fortune, are most difficult because everything must be built from scratch, with no established loyalty. Two crucial concepts run throughout the book: virtù and fortuna. Fortune represents circumstances beyond our control. Machiavelli estimates it controls about half of our actions. He compares fortune to a raging river that destroys everything in its path, but when calm, allows people to build levees that control where water flows during the next flood. Virtù encompasses ability, strength, cunning, boldness, and effectiveness. A prince with great virtù prepares during peaceful times for inevitable crises. He develops military strength, builds alliances, and cultivates the qualities necessary to respond when fortune turns against him. Successful leaders don't simply ride their good luck, they prepare for bad luck. The worst leaders succeed through fortune alone and never develop real capability. When their luck runs out, they collapse. Military power and the question of fear versus love. For Machiavelli, military capability is the foundation of all political power. A prince who lacks strong arms is vulnerable to every threat. Without military strength, all other political skills become meaningless. Machiavelli is particularly scathing about mercenary forces, professional soldiers hired from outside the state. Mercenaries are unreliable because they're motivated solely by payment. They have no real stake in the state's survival. In peacetime, they're expensive. In war, they're cowardly because they're unwilling to risk their lives for someone else's cause. Auxiliary troops, borrowed from allied states, are even more dangerous. If they lose, you're defeated. If they win, you're now at their mercy. The only truly reliable military force is one composed of the prince's own subjects. These soldiers have a direct interest in the state's survival because it's their home. They fight harder and remain loyal. A prince should make military training his primary occupation, even in peacetime. He should study terrain, practice tactics, and read military history. Here we reach the most controversial aspect of Machiavelli's thought, his advice on when to act immorally. He poses a famous question. Is it better for a prince to be loved or feared? Ideally, both. But if one must choose, fear is more reliable than love. People are fickle. They love according to their own interests and can withdraw that love when circumstances change. Fear, particularly fear of punishment, is more consistent because it depends on the prince's power, not on people's emotions. However, Machiavelli strongly cautions against being hated. There's a crucial difference between being feared and being hated. A prince becomes hated when he seizes his subjects' property or dishonors their families. As long as a prince leaves people's possessions and families alone, most will accept even harsh rule. But take what people hold dear, and they'll risk everything for revenge. When cruelty is necessary, Machiavelli advises that it be done swiftly and decisively, all at once, so people aren't in constant fear of what comes next. After that initial harshness, the prince should distribute benefits gradually over time, so they're savored and appreciated. This maximizes the positive impression while minimizing the negative. This approach sounds cynical, but Machiavelli would argue it's actually more merciful in the long run. A prince who is too compassionate and tolerates disorder may seem kind, but the resulting chaos harms everyone. Brief, decisive harshness that establishes order ultimately causes less suffering than prolonged permissiveness that allows violence and instability to flourish. Appearance, adaptation, and the new prince. One of Machiavelli's most subtle insights concerns the gap between being virtuous and appearing virtuous. In an ideal world, a prince would possess all admirable qualities: mercy, faithfulness, honesty, and religious devotion. But Machiavelli observes that actually possessing all these qualities all the time is impossible and often counterproductive. Instead, a successful prince must appear to have these qualities while retaining the flexibility to act contrary to them when necessary. The general population judges by appearances and outcomes, not by examining a ruler's actual character. If a prince appears religious and merciful while being ruthless when circumstances demand it, he can maintain popular support while effectively dealing with threats. This isn't simply about lying. It's about understanding that different situations require different approaches. A prince must be like a fox and a lion. The lion cannot defend against traps, and the fox cannot defend against wolves. So he must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Those who simply play the lion and ignore the fox don't understand their role. The appearance of virtue also provides political cover for necessary but unpopular actions. If people generally believe their prince is good, they'll explain away harsh actions as unfortunate necessities, rather than evidence of tyranny. This reservoir of goodwill becomes a crucial political resource. Machiavelli also examines why some leaders succeed, while others, seemingly equally capable, fail. His answer involves the alignment between a leader's natural disposition and the circumstances they face. Some situations call for boldness, others require caution. The problem is that people's temperaments tend to be fixed. A naturally bold leader will act boldly, regardless of whether the situation calls for it. The truly exceptional leader would adapt their approach to match changing circumstances. But Machiavelli admits this is extraordinarily difficult because it requires fighting against one's own nature. This creates a paradox. The very qualities that bring someone to power may ensure their inevitable downfall. Leaders rise, succeed for a time, then fall, often not because they changed, but because circumstances changed while they stayed the same. Consolidating new power and Italy's liberation. Machiavelli pays particular attention to the new prince, someone who has recently acquired power through conquest or political maneuvering. This ruler lacks established legitimacy and faces numerous enemies. The new prince must eliminate potential rivals, win over or neutralize important political factions, demonstrate strength to deter external threats, and begin building new loyalties and institutions. Machiavelli offers the example of Cesare Borgia, who conquered the Romagna region through a combination of his father's support, personal ability, and ruthless efficiency. Borgia established order in a previously chaotic region, winning popular support while simultaneously eliminating rivals and potential threats. Though Borgia ultimately failed due to extraordinarily bad fortune, Machiavelli presents his methods as a model of how to consolidate new power. The new prince must be especially careful about whom he trusts. Those who helped him gain power did so for their own reasons. They wanted to benefit from the change. If their expectations aren't met, they become disillusioned. Meanwhile, those who opposed his rise remain resentful. The new prince thus walks a tightrope, satisfying enough interest to maintain support while never depending too heavily on any particular faction. The prince concludes with a passionate appeal for the unification and liberation of Italy from foreign domination. Machiavelli calls for a new prince who will embody the principles he's outlined and drive out the invaders who have devastated the Italian peninsula. This final chapter reveals that the prince wasn't simply an academic exercise. It was driven by genuine patriotic anguish. Machiavelli had witnessed Italy's humiliation firsthand. The early 1500s saw Italy as a patchwork of competing city-states. Florence, Venice, Milan, the Papal States, and Naples, constantly at war with each other. French and Spanish armies marched through Italian territories almost unopposed. The various Italian states, divided and weak, were unable to resist foreign powers. Machiavelli believed that only a bold, capable, and ruthless leader could unify Italy and restore its glory. This was his justification for recommending actions that might seem immoral. The higher purpose of liberating Italy and ending the suffering of its people justified whatever means were necessary. This passionate conclusion adds crucial context to the entire work. Machiavelli wasn't advocating amorality for its own sake, but arguing that exceptional circumstances justify exceptional measures. I want to give you credits for making it this far. Believe me, you're one of the few who is willing to put this amount of effort to attain knowledge. The summary is almost finished apart from the conclusion, but if you found this summary valuable thus far, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you'd take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These small actions help more people discover content like this and support the creation of more in-depth explorations of important books and ideas. I'd also encourage you to check out the other videos on this channel, where we dive deep into other influential works across philosophy, history, and political thought. And if this particular exploration of the prince has intrigued you, I strongly recommend purchasing the actual book. There's a link in the description below. Reading Machiavelli's original words provides nuances and insights that no summary can fully capture. Additionally, if you enjoy consuming books through audio, consider trying Audible, where you can access full audiobook versions of The Prince and thousands of other titles. There's a link for that in the description as well. That's it for now. Let's move on to the conclusion. The enduring relevance of Machiavelli. More than 500 years after Machiavelli wrote The Prince, the book remains controversial, widely read, and deeply influential. The term Machiavellian has entered common language as a descriptor for cunning, manipulative behavior. But this reputation misses much of what makes The Prince important. Machiavelli's central achievement was forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about how power actually operates. Before Machiavelli, political philosophy largely consisted of describing ideal states and virtuous rulers. After Machiavelli, political thought had to grapple with reality, with the fact that successful governance often requires morally ambiguous actions, that good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes, and that leaders face genuine dilemmas where all available choices involve some form of wrong. Many have argued against his separation of politics from morality, insisting that political action cannot be divorced from ethical considerations. Others have pointed out that his focus on individual rulers ignores the importance of institutions, laws, and civic culture in maintaining stable states. But even critics must engage with the questions Machiavelli raised. How should leaders act when conventional morality conflicts with the survival of their state? Is there such a thing as necessary evil? What do we do when being good leads to bad outcomes? These aren't abstract philosophical puzzles. They're dilemmas that leaders face constantly, from presidents deciding on military action to managers navigating corporate politics. The Prince endures because it speaks to permanent features of political life: the struggle for power, the tension between ideals and reality, and the complex relationship between means and ends. Whether we agree with Machiavelli's answers or not, we cannot escape his questions. For anyone interested in politics, leadership, or simply understanding how the world works, The Prince remains essential reading. It strips away comforting illusions and forces us to think clearly about power. And in our own turbulent times, Machiavelli's unflinching realism seems more relevant than ever.